Okay, hey everybody. So today we're going to go over tips and tricks for polishing up your GitHub. But before that, a couple announcements. First, since this week is our last week of study groups, some things to look out for. Just remember that you have to pass your capstone review by October 22nd. So keep that date in your mind. Of course, you can do it sooner than that. It's just whenever you pass your capstone project and also submit your fourth blog. That has to all be done by October 22nd. And remember, we are not presenting on Friday like we usually do. We're actually going to be presenting next Tuesday, so a week from today. Your presentations should not be longer than 8 minutes, but because it's capstones, I'm not going to cut anybody off. Also, I've set aside like 2 hours for these presentations, so I'll have time for you all to ask each other questions if you'd like, so on and so forth. So just some more reminders as we're leading up to graduation. Your official graduation date is the day that you pass your review or the date of which you submit your last blog, whichever one comes later, whichever one your final deliverable is, that is your official graduation date. Now, let's just say that you finish your last deliverable on October 13th, one day after the presentation. So from that date, within 2 weeks, you will get your certificate emailed to you saying that you clocked like 525 hours of data science work. I've already sent you all instructions on how to download your Canvas content. So within 3 weeks before, after your official graduation date, so let's say I finished my final deliverable October 13th, 3 weeks after that, so 21 days after that, which I think is what, November the 2nd or 3rd, whatever it is, you'll lose access to Canvas 3 weeks after. So make sure that you download your information if you want to keep it. The graduation ceremony is going to take place, I believe, in mid-November. I don't know the exact date yet. It's usually on like a Thursday evening. I'll read your names. Yeah. And then part of this invite, there will be a form that you can get your Flatiron swag. I believe you get at least t-shirts. I forget if you get hoodies. I think you do, but don't quote me on that. Okay, so those are things pertaining to graduation. Any questions regarding that, please let me know. I think for graduation questions, it's helpful to put them in a Slack channel so everyone can see, so I don't get the same questions over and over. So the capstone reviews. So for the reviews of these capstone projects, I'm going to conduct them a little bit different. As you all know, I'm pretty chill with the reviews, but for this particular review for your capstone, I'm going to conduct it kind of interview style. Now, if you're unable to answer some of the more technical questions that I'm asking, you're not going to fail. I would just like you all to be aware of what are the questions that people can ask you based on your project. So it's going to be done in the form of questions. Just pretend that I don't know anything about your capstone project, and you'll be doing a technical walkthrough of your project with me. Again, assume that I don't know anything. You're going to have to explain to me your processes, so on and so forth. Usually it's not very nitty gritty, but if you're able to explain overall processes, maybe whatever final model you chose, look into how it works. That's a typical question that gets asked as well. To prepare, actually not just this one, but I have it in DS concept questions, which is a doc that you guys also have in your in the Flatiron resources. These are the project questions that I'm pretty much going to go over during your capstone reviews. So an overview of your project and what were your motivations for working on it. This could be connected to your business case. If you had a data collection process, talk about that. Were there any relevant or interesting insights you got from your data prior to modeling? Summary of your modeling processes and any conclusions, takeaways, recommendations. So pretty straightforward, like all of your projects so far, you'll be able to answer these questions. So yeah, just know that I'm just gonna kind of role play the fact that I don't know anything about your capstone for these capstone reviews, which is why make sure that you're booking extra time, that 45-minute slot if you can find one. Okay. Oh, I need to change this. So additional 101s. After you graduate, I will be offering additional 101s, up to 3 for each of you. Of course, within a reasonable time frame. I mean, I'm not going to turn anybody down, but Slack me first. And then for these additional 101s, I would say till the end of like November, up till the end of November. Okay. So for these additional 101s, it can be for anything. really. More than happy to talk about job search processes, things that you're seeing when you're applying for jobs. Also happy to do mock technical interviews. That's something that a lot of students who are graduating or have graduated come back to me for. And then you can book it via my one-on-one link as per usual. And in terms of Slack, so you're going to have access to this Slack channel while you're actively job searching. So you're not going to immediately lose access to this Slack channel. If there are any like resources that you want to go back and save, you can totally do that. But in addition to this Slack workspace, you'll be added to a different workspace called Flatiron Alumni. Now you can find me on there as well. I'm on that Slack workspace. I think I'm the only one with my name, so you'll find me very easily there. In the future, if you do have any questions, I'm going to mention this again, but please reach out to me on that Slack because this Slack gets really flooded with questions. Within that Slack, there's a lot more talk about like job search stuff. There's a lot more jobs relevant. And you know, if you're, if at any point you want to connect with a Flatiron alumni that you see that I know, and by the way, this goes out to all of you, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you see anybody who is like a connection of mine that you want to get in contact with, and if they're a Flatiron alumni, more than happy to make that intro. More than likely it will be on the alumni workspace. Okay, any questions regarding any of that before we get into some GitHub stuff? All right, I will probably mention a bunch of these points again anyways, because they're pretty important. Okay, so let's go into GitHub. So I'm going to start first. I'm actually going to use my own GitHub as an example, but I will also admit that I haven't needed to be job searching. So my GitHub is also not the best example, but I'm going to mention some of the things that you should keep in mind while you are, polishing your own GitHub. All right, so first, your profile page. So I don't know if you guys have gotten to your profile pages and see what it looks like. Very likely what it will have is a bunch of like random labs on top. So the first thing that you should do is pin up to 6 repos that you want people to see. As you can see here, I have 596 repositories, and this is really just from forking and cloning, or just forking a bunch of like Flatiron School labs. So that's why they're all there. If you don't pin specific repositories, it's just going to pick a bunch of, I forget what their metric is for picking the random 6 that show up, but you should pick your projects. So you have 5 projects. After graduation, more than likely you're working on additional stuff. You might want to pin that here as well. Like I think out of these, like 1, 2, 3, 4 of these are my Flatiron School projects still. So from your page, you just have to click customize your pins. You can filter for specific repositories. So all of my study group repos, these are my other cohorts. As an example, you can just search up a repo and pin it. And you can only pin up to 6, so you can see 0 remaining. If I like untick this, it gives me like 1 remaining. So make sure that you do that and make sure that they're highlighting what you want to highlight. Also within here, I haven't done this in a while, but you can also like reorder how you want your pins to look. Yeah, you can reorder it. I don't know if you want to see it in a specific order. Usually you want to have a good variety of projects, and I do think that 5 Flatiron projects do give you like a good range of projects to show off of your profile. Cool. Now from here, as you can tell, what you see on your profile page are the titles and descriptions of repositories. So to make your profile page more effective, I do recommend doing something about the titles of repositories, maybe make it a little bit more consistent or project relevant. Like for example, I think, actually these are all pretty descriptive. I think this is a classifier, this is a rec system. That is a title that I came up with, probably not the best one. And then this is like a deep learning classifier as well. So if your titles are descriptive, that's helpful for people to know what project you're working on. In addition to that, you also have the descriptions. So here you have a good amount of space for your descriptions. So this, even though I have like 5 lines of text, the box actually expands. I don't know the limit of this, but make use of this space that's being given to you. And the reason for curating this page is because if you, for those of you who have met with your career coaches already, and if they've given you a resume template, I'm going to talk more about resumes tomorrow. Actually, let me pull up. Is it this one? All right, I'm going to go through this doc tomorrow. but this is Flatiron's template for resumes, which I actually do like. I just changed the fonts and everything to suit something that I like more. But on the top, you will be linking your GitHub. So nowadays, all resumes are submitted using PDFs. And so people will have a direct link to your GitHub. So yeah, that's why that's important. People will click on that link to see what code you've been working on. Now, on top of that, other smaller things to think about. Oh, and by the way, like I would just focus on being concise and as clear as possible when coming up with these descriptions. Okay, next, profile picture. Career coach will tell you to put a professional profile picture. I know that's mine is not professional, but I'm not job seeking. So next, also contributions. So as you can see here, my contributions are mainly on like, I guess, Monday, Tuesdays. And here are basically, I have contributions every time I push new changes to your study group repos. Not right now, to be expected, but as you're still working in your capstone and as you're in the job search process, I will say that employers, this is not a deal breaker for employers, but it's good for them to see that you are working on stuff consistently. And one way for them to gauge that is by looking at your GitHub contribution. So every time you push something onto GitHub, it counts as a contribution. So typically what your career coach, I think your career coaches are gonna ask for a certain number of commits per week. Now, they don't care if you change something in a markdown file and then push up the changes, it still counts as a contribution. So whatever you do to get your contributions up, do that. And I think be fairly consistent. I think this period, I don't know what I was doing here. I think I was just like preparing a lot of materials at the same time. I'm not sure, but be fairly consistent. I've seen some profiles that have like nothing at all, and it just looks like they don't code. But I will say that this is only one of many ways that people can track the fact that you're, working on stuff. So, but, good to cover all your bases. Okay, so commit just often enough to look like you have activity. And I think, I haven't had much recent activity. Okay, since we're on the topic of contributions, a quick and easy way that you can get a contribution is actually through opening GitHub issues. Now, you can only open GitHub issues on repositories that are your own. So as an example, if I take one of my projects, like this one over here, oh, this one was already open. So you can open up GitHub issues, and an issue and opening up an issue actually counts as a contribution. So that's good. So to do that, and what issues are basically, I like to use it as a way to keep track of things that I want to do. Like, for example, all of your projects so far, you've mentioned future work. And at this stage, maybe some of your future work is attainable and is something that you can actually work on during this in-between time of graduation and starting a new job. So creating a new issue is literally just writing yourself a note on what you want to do. So the last note that I put here, I think, was to like demonstrate to other people what an issue is. But yeah, just creating a front end, change to allow new user input. This is just an example, counts as a contribution as well. So if you just want to get some activity going on your GitHub, that's a quick way to do it. If you don't see this issues tab, it's likely because you're not the owner of the repository, or you're not an authorized writer of the repository. So be careful, because I know some of you are doing your projects off the fork of the project repo, and I think you're not allowed to add issues onto those. So I usually tell people to just copy all of your stuff, put it into your own brand new repo. So yeah. Okay. What else? Ooh, also not very important, but good to know. You can follow people on GitHub if you'd like. So I just follow back people who follow me that I know. So if you want to do that, you can, but it's less of a big deal. Okay. Any questions about GitHub Profile? I'll tell you that multiple people, because I do take interviews sometimes just out of curiosity when people reach out to me. Multiple people are like, what are you doing that you have 600 repositories? And I have to tell them that these are all like Flatiron School labs.
Hi, so I'm doing my project off of Colab. Do you recommend like transferring it over more frequently so that it Looks like I'm more active on GitHub.
That's a good question. Colab is something that, well, Colab is a newer product, and I think it is beneficial just to check. But if it is at a point where doing that transferal is very detrimental to your workflow, I don't think it's as worth it. So it's up to you to weigh. I don't know how easy it is to like update changes via Colab, but if you're finding it a seamless process just for the sake of version control, saving your work, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else? All right. Next, we're going to talk about the project repo itself. And I'm going to use one of my project repos as an example. Again, not a prime example, but I'm going to use it as a template to talk about things. All right, so first off, number of commits. Why it is important that you use GitHub for a couple of reasons. One, version control. That's literally the purpose of GitHub, to like have a spot where you can see your saved work and all your revision history. You want to have a good number of commits per your repo. It is not usually a good sign if it says added files via upload. I know that's something that a couple of people have done, but it's fine for now. But to show that you know how to use Git through like your Git bash or through your terminal, you want to demonstrate that you are committing your work fairly regularly and that you have a good number of commits. So here with this project, I've been working on this project since 2019, I guess. And yeah, I have quite a good number of commits. And with each of them, I have my commit messages. I think more than like 5 commits is good. Usually if it's just one commit and it's just like your added files via upload, people will question whether you know how to use Git version control. So something to think about. Next, other than the number of commits, your commit messages. So commit messages should be informative. One, so that if you wanted to go back and look at a prior version of your project, you know what to look for. But also, I've been called out many, many times on my commit messages. Like a lot of interviews, I've been called out for bad commit messages, which is on me. As an example, this is one of them where I was actually testing a front end and I was just getting really, really frustrated. And a lot of people called me out on these commit messages. So not in a bad way, it was kind of like a funny thing, but people do look at your commit messages. So take that into account. Don't be like me. Don't be frustrated at your front end. This is what I was doing. Okay. So there's commit messages. Next, also your file architecture, your file and folder architecture and the repository structure. I've seen a bunch of repositories where it's literally like you scroll for a bunch and it's all files, and it could be like all of the individual images that are in your README, one image per row. It really takes up space. Do organize your repository. It makes it a lot more digestible. If people want to find specific pieces of code, they should know where to look. So for example, this is just one way of doing it. And this is how I like to do it because I used to have a really slow, small computer. So I always used to separate stuff into different notebooks. You don't have to do that, of course. But I have my different processes in different notebooks. So as you can see here, I have 3 main Jupyter notebooks that I think are pretty clearly labeled. This is for EDA. This is my modeling. This is like my final model where I was like writing functions to eventually productionalize this project. And other than that, all of the other folders are pretty self-explanatory as well. All the images are here. My archives, this is like an archive notebook where it was pretty much my scrap notebook when I was doing my project as a student. So that's there. My data files are in here as well. My pickle files for my models are all in here as well. So organize your repo. Don't have something like, this is also not, I would prefer it to be neater than this. But yeah, take note of that. Make it easy for people to find your code. Part of that, if you do feel like you have a lot of places where people could potentially find important parts of your project, put it in your README. Put a section of like Jupyter Notebook repository structure. I've seen some people do it at the very, very end. You could do it at the very top as well. Maybe label your files in a way that is easy for people to figure out what's in where. Or yeah, have a section in your README just telling people where you want to find what. You could even sprinkle it throughout your README. Let's say here I have a data cleaning section. I could even say, all right, for data cleaning and EDA, check out this notebook. And as I move on to modeling, check out this notebook. Many different ways you can go about it. One more thing, slide decks. So this is, I do think it's kind of subjective. You all have presentations for your projects. Some people like to have their slide decks on their repo just so they're all stored in the same place. Definitely feel free to do that. Make sure it's clear that it's your presentation. I will say there are some pros and cons to putting your slide deck on there. And it does depend on the way that you put together your slides. So I've seen a bunch of slides that are very light on the content because due to presentation style, maybe you're like someone who improvises much more. So because of that, on the slide itself, there's very, very little information. And so if you have a presentation like that, that's very word light, putting that on here might not be very helpful. It takes up more space. What I've seen some people do that I think is actually really, really helpful if you have that kind of presentation. If your presentation is more on the wordy side, that's good because they have all the information there. But also I've seen people add like presentation notes on their repo as well. So depending on your presentation style and how you put that presentation together, different ways of representing that on your GitHub. All right. Any questions about that in terms of like folders, overall organization? All right. Next, your project README. Now I know README is one of the things that I actually do read for your project. And to be honest, I'm not very strict on your README because READMEs are something that those are usually the first things that people go back and fix once you've graduated, because once you've gone through 5 phases of material or 4 phases plus a capstone project's worth of material, you have a lot more perspective to go back and edit your older READMEs to match the voice that you want to portray, to highlight the things that you want to highlight to make your projects variable or varied. So I'm not usually very strict in the README unless there's something that's factually incorrect. So with the project README, it's very subjective how you want to do it. So I've seen people that have very, very long, extremely detailed READMEs, and those are great, especially when you have that kind of writing style that really is suited for longer pieces of text that people don't, fall asleep to. I feel like if I were to write a really long README, no one is going to read it. So I've seen really effective long READMEs. I actually prefer READMEs to be on the shorter side, but it's very, very subjective. I'm not the one reading it. It's going to be you trying to sell your project and sell your skills through, your README. So my main pieces of advice, maximize clarity as much as possible. I think I've told you all this stat before, I don't remember, but I was speaking to a couple of technical recruiters, and on average, they spend 15 seconds looking at a person's GitHub repo. And so you really want your README to catch people's attention so that they know what it is that you're working on. So yeah, with 15 seconds, you really got to grab their attention. What you do with that information and how you want to organize your work is very much up to you, because different people have different ways of making their work stand out in like 15 seconds. Happy to look over READMEs for those one-on-ones that I mentioned that I will do after y'all graduate. More than happy to talk about things that could be made clearer or things that could be rephrased, so on and so forth. Really make use of markdown formatting. That's something else. So here, this README is from very long ago, but I basically have like headers. I would say make use of like bold text and like the backtick text to make the code blocks. Those are good. And in terms of EDA, only use the most relevant graphs. Even just looking at this right now, I feel like I would totally rework the EDA that I'm showing here, and I would make it much more model focused, right? I would go off of the most important features from one of my models to show, the words, not just top 20 most common words. This is not very useful for people to know, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, in terms of graphs, I've seen a lot of people put like their giant scatter matrix dump, which honestly, if it's more than like 7 by 7, no one is going to go and look and see, oh, these are correlated. So do you want that do you want people to see that in their 15 minutes of looking at your GitHub repository? Other things that we don't want to see, usually blocks of uncommented code. This is also just like within your notebooks, try to not have too much uncommented code within your notebooks. You do want to show people that you're able to explain what it is that you're doing. Also, try not to have screenshots of code in your README. That just looks unprofessional. So instead of taking screenshots of code, you can put triple backticks to put markdown code formatting. So I think I can show you all here. I sent out this markdown cheat sheet a bunch, but yeah, you can have it look like this. You can just do triple backticks. Let me see if there's, yeah, triple backticks like this, so that it comes out in a little code block. And that's a lot neater than screenshotting your Jupyter notebook and pasting it there. What else? What else? Yeah, Jupyter screenshots are usually a no. Cool. Other things that you can highlight that I think will be useful. If you work with somebody, it's always nice to give credit where credit is due. Maybe you can hyperlink your project partners' GitHub URLs or something like that, or LinkedIn or things like that. Yeah, if anything, you can also put your own LinkedIn, your own contact information, usually not like phone number and email address. Usually LinkedIn is good enough. You put at the bottom, for example. Other things to highlight, and these are more based off of what people are looking for as they're parsing through someone's GitHub repository. Did you merge different data sources? Mention that, synthesizing data sources. And this is actually going to come hand in hand with what I'm going to talk about tomorrow in terms of what to highlight on your resume. Did you synthesize different data sources? Almost everyone for the first project synthesized data sources. So mention that at some point. Did you create a pipeline to collect data maybe? Or did you have like a data cleaning pipeline that you created to take your raw CSVs for, I don't know, through like cleaning processes to get ready for modeling? Do you have a dashboard or any sort of front end? You can either link it or screenshot it. As an example, I have one of my projects that I built like a super simple front end. It's not even hosted on the internet anywhere, but this was my capstone, by the way. Not great, but yeah, this was like the front end that I created, and it has a quick description of how the front end works. And the front end code is actually in here somewhere. As you can see, it's a dash package. So this is a Flask with dash app. What else? Yeah, if you have a local front end, tell people that this is part of a local front end, or if it's hosted somewhere, throw in the URL. I realized I forgot to talk about hosted things last time. I'll post some link resources. I'll link some resources on your Slack channel later. I'll also send everyone bullet points of what I'm talking about right now. Cool. Other things to highlight, especially if your project is a machine learning project, very important to talk about how much better your final model did compared to some sort of baseline, especially for data scientist roles that involve modeling. People want to see that you're able to iterate and improve upon your modeling. So I usually like to tell people that set some baseline. I know I didn't say it here because this is not a great README, but start by saying, okay, my baseline model was maybe like a logistic regression or a dummy classifier, something like that. And then say how much you improved it by your final model. So with this example, let's just say that, okay, I had test accuracies over here. Test accuracy, 59% for k-nearest neighbors, 96% with naive Bayes. So I would say something like, I improved my my test metrics by 50% from baseline to final model, just as an example. Cool. I've been going off like a really rough bullet point that I always forget to throw into a doc, so I will throw it into a doc and send it out to you all in a little bit. But those are the main things to keep in mind for your GitHub, for polishing your GitHub, whether it is for individual projects. The main thing to take away is just you want to be as clear as possible, and really think about what you want someone to take away from looking at your GitHub repo. Like for me, I would say like I want people to know that I understand how different models work. If I had to redo all my stuff and look for a job right now, that's what I would do. I would actually go into detail of like why I chose certain models over other models, what my main goals were for each project. For some people, the main goal is for inference. I know for some of you, the classification project, y'all built it for inference rather than prediction. Mention that as well. yeah, definitely take it a step deeper or a step further than just like, yeah, I just implemented a bunch of stuff, which I mean is what you all did anyways, but you know, you want to show that you have more depth to knowledge than that. And then, yeah, tomorrow I'll talk more about resume stuff, but yeah, just remember that this page is going to be what's linked on your resume. So this will be the first thing that people see. So make sure it's professional or make sure it's how you want people to see it. I put like my LinkedIn as well, put my location. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyone have any questions regarding putting your GitHub together? One thing that you could do actually, and I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow, is for your resume, each of your projects is going to have 3 lines of description. For those of you who have started working as career coaches, you know this as well. But yeah, each project is going to have 3 to 4 lines of description. You could use those same lines as your project descriptions here. Maybe summarize even more. I don't know, just something I thought of. But yeah, anyone have any questions before I kill this recording? Going once, going twice. All right.